There is potential for increase in state revenue from hundreds of millions up to 500 million each year. Some or all of the regulatory cost would be offset by the payments sports betting operators must pay to the state for regulation. And so on the left side of the screen, you'll see some of the supporters of Prop 27. Those supporting Prop 27 say that it would provide hundreds of millions of dollars to support programs that alleviate homelessness, mental health, and addiction in California. They point out that online betting is already happening in California through offshore operators and bookies. Supporters believe gambling should be legal in California as it is in other states. And Prop 27 will give those tribes who can afford the operating fees even more revenue for their tribes. And now this is the slide that shows some of the opponents of Prop 27. Those opposing Prop 27 say that it is being pushed by the out-of-state online gambling industry. The billions of dollars will go to their companies and not stay here in California. Since it costs a sporting entity $10 million to become an online betting organization, smaller gaming companies will be unable to compete. Many tribes with casinos and smaller card rooms are concerned that they will lose clients and as a result lose jobs and revenue if Prop 27 passes. Opponents express concern that gambling available on mobile device or online makes gambling easier and increases gambling addiction, which is a major cause of bankruptcy and homelessness. In addition, opponents say the 21-year-old age requirement will be difficult to regulate. Finally, they say legalizing online gambling to pay for social ills like homelessness is not a solution. And so here are the latest on campaign contributions as of yesterday. If you want to get updated information, you can also go to votersedge.org, and that is updated frequently. And so I'll leave that up there for a moment so you can take a look at it. All right. Okay, so a yes vote on Prop 27 means that licensed tribes and gaming companies could offer mobile and online sports betting for adults 21 and older outside of Native American tribal lands. Gaming companies would participate if they make a deal with the tribe. Voting no means sports betting would continue to be illegal in California. Because both of these propositions have to do with gambling, we've put together some comparison slides. And so this particular slide is showing the differences between Props 26 and 27. And so Prop 26 legalizes in-person, emphasizing in-person sports betting only in certain locations and allows roulette and dice games at casinos. Prop 27 legalizes online and mobile sports betting on non-tribal lands. Both Prop 26 and 27 would limit sports betting to those 21 or more years old and provide regulation of new activities. Both would prohibit betting on events such as high school sports or elections. If both pass, it is possible that both will take effect, but the courts could find that some provisions are in conflict. Those provisions that received the most yes votes would prevail. One final bit of comparison, we can look at how the tax revenues are raised and where the tax revenue would go. What is taxed? For Prop 26, the daily sports bets profits at racetracks would be taxed at 10%. For tribal casinos offering sports betting, there would be required payments to state and local governments. For Prop 27, operating profits after prize payments, federal taxes, and regulatory costs would be taxed at 10%. Plus, there are licensing fees. Where does the money go? Prop 26 funds would go first to mandated K-12 funding. The remainder would be divided as follows. 70% to the general fund, and 15% each to gambling addiction programs and enforcement of gambling regulations. For Prop 27, no money would go to K through 12 funding. Instead, after regulatory costs, prize payments, federal gambling taxes, and licenses are paid, sports betting profits would be allocated as followed: 85% to homeless and related mental health programs, and 15% to other tribes without casinos.
Okay.
All right, and now I'm going to pass it back over to Mandy.
Okay. This proposition is a little more straightforward. So Prop 28 would require that the state sets aside some of its revenue to fund arts and music education in K through 12 public schools. This is an initiative statute, so supporters gathered signatures at a cost of approximately $10.40 per signature. So our public schools right now serve about 6 million K through 12 students. And roughly about 60% of those students are from low-income families. Prop 98, which was passed in 1988, changed the California Constitution to require a minimum percentage of the state budget be spent on K through 14 education, but doesn't guarantee annual funding specifically for arts and music education. There are some state-funded enrichment programs which may contain arts and music education. State law does require schools to provide music and arts instruction to all students in grades 1 through 6, and students in grades 7 and 8 must be offered art and music as an elective. High school students must currently complete 1 year of arts or music to graduate. If passed, Prop 28 would require that the state provide funding specifically for arts and music education in K through 12 public schools. The funding would be in addition to the funding already guaranteed to schools by Prop 98, and it would require the state to fund an amount equal to 1% of the funding received by schools from Prop 98 in the previous year, specifically for arts and music education. The legislature could reduce that funding following a 2/3 vote from both the Senate and Assembly. So funding to the schools would be based on their enrollment. 70% of the funding would be allocated to schools based on number of students. 30% would be allocated to schools based on proportion of students from low-income households. A school's principal would be responsible for planning how the funding would be spent. Schools with more than 500 students would be required to spend 80% of the funding to employ staff and 20% on training and supplies. Each year, local school boards would be required to certify that their schools spent the funding provided by Prop 28 on music and arts education and report publicly how this money was spent. The fiscal impact on the state and on state and local governments is likely to be around $800 million to $1 billion each year. This is less than 1/2 of 1% of the state's general fund. The state's general fund is $234 billion. Now, here are the supporters. So the supporters, again, are on the left of the slide. The supporters say that Prop 28 would increase funding for educational programs without raising taxes. They add that only about 1 of 5 California public schools has a dedicated teacher for arts or music right now, compared to other states such as New York, where over 75% of schools have a designated art or music instructor. Prop 28 would address this deficiency. Proponents say also that studies show that arts and music education improves a student's personal life and academic potential and provides skills such as computer graphics, which could lead to a variety of employment opportunities. Opponents, so this is an interesting one because there are no groups that are publicly opposing this measure right now. But there has been something written saying that this is not, some opponents are saying that it's not a way to create a budget for schools. They say that requiring a set amount for music and art education reduces the ability of the state to fund other programs that are equally important. Also, if enrollment declines, this will reduce flexibility to shift funding from schools to other programs. And you can see again, in terms of the money that's been spent, about 11 million has been spent by supporters of the proposition. And as far as Voters Edge reports, no money's been spent opposing it. So, so again, yes, a vote would mean the state would provide additional funding specifically for arts education in public schools, above, in addition to the constitutionally required amount of funding for K through 14. No, a no vote means funding for arts and education in public schools would continue to depend on state and local budget decisions. Okay, Dottie, back to you.
All right. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Prop 29. Prop 29 would require dialysis clinics to have at least one doctor, nurse practitioner, or physician's assistant present during patient segments. This is an initiative statute. Supporters gathered signatures, which about 21. It cost about $21.46 per signature. About 80,000 Californians receive hemodialysis each month in one of 650 dialysis centers in California. This treatment is usually done 3 times a week, lasting about 4 hours. Most clinics are open 6 days a week. Nearly 3/4 of these clinics are owned by 2 for-profit corporations, DaVita Incorporated and Fresenius Medical Care. The California Department of Public Health is responsible for licensing dialysis clinics, using federal regulations as the basis for licensing. Currently, all dialysis clinics must be licensed to receive Medicare and Medi-Cal payments. A board-certified medical doctor must be affiliated with each center and be responsible for quality of care, staff training, and clinic practices. Federal law also requires reports to the National Healthcare Safety Network on kidney-related infections. This is the third proposition that has been supported by SEIU United Health Workers West, a labor union for healthcare workers, one in 2018 and one in 2020. Neither passed. If passed, Prop 29 would require at least one licensed clinician to be on site during treatment at kidney dialysis clinics. It would require clinics to provide patients with a list of all physicians who have 5% or higher ownership interest in the clinic and report this every 3 months to the state. Failure to do so would result in a $100,000 fine. It would require dialysis-related infections to be reported to a state agency and mandate state approval for clinics to close or reduce services. Clinics would have to offer the same level of care to all patients, regardless of source of payment, private insurance, or Medicare, Medi-Cal. The fiscal impact on state and local government is uncertain. If this proposition passes, clinic owners will most likely negotiate higher insurance payments to offset increased staffing costs. The impact to the state budget would likely be in the low tens of millions of dollars annually for increased costs for Medi-Cal patients, as well as increased administrative responsibilities. And on the left side of the screen, you can see some of the supporters of Prop 29. And the supporters say that a trained clinician on site is needed during patient treatment for improved oversight. Supporters believe patients and the public should know who owns the clinics and who will profit from treatment. Proponents want to make sure that no one is turned away due to source of payment and that service for everyone is comparable. Proponents state that dialysis companies are